Hi everybody, these are just some early impressions from the Gwent beta. I got access on Thursday the 27th, so those future waves that they promised of beta codes going out, they're still going out, so if you haven't gotten yours yet and you've requested yours, just be patient, they might actually come out. I've only played about 24 matches so far in about the 24 hours that I've had it, not even 24 hours, I think I'm recording this 18 hours after the fact. And it's been a mix of some casual matches and some with, the casual matches are just like the matchmaking with random strangers. I've also done a fair amount of the AI matches just because it's a little bit easier when you're customizing a deck to just say, hey, I just want to try this against an AI just to see what it's about. No dicking around, it's not going to affect my level any bit. First and foremost, this is the first card game that I've had a lot of fun with. Things like Hearthstone, Magic the Gathering, and even the Pokemon trading card game. Those never caught on for me because I'm just not caught up on those things. Like, I got introduced to Magic the Gathering when I was a real youngin' back in the early 90s when my friends were first started getting into it. And, I had a few cards, but I just couldn't get into it, really. I had other priorities when I was, 7 or 8 years old. Pokemon was a little bit more my thing, but that was more of a collection aspect. I have a shiny OG Charizard sitting somewhere in my parents' house. In Warcraft, that I haven't followed Warcraft since Warcraft 2, and there's been about 2 decades worth of lore that I just can't be bothered to catch up on. But The Witcher is something that I have stayed with for years now. I'm familiar with The Witcher lore, played all 3 Witcher games. I've read most of the books when they've been translated into English. That's something that I feel really comfortable talking about, and so now with the Gwent game coming out, that's more my thing. So first things first, the tutorial is really, really thorough. If you're a newcomer to Gwent or the Witcher series, the tutorial will handhold you through a lot of the early process, because it is a very different game. You're not actually damaging a player. The player doesn't have a hit point count like you would see in Hearthstone. Essentially, there are a maximum of 3 rounds. That's all you can have. There's no extension beyond that. And if you have higher strength cards at the end of a round, that's what denotes you winning that round. So all of your cards will eventually, they add up to a sum total, but there's different event cards and effect cards that can change the layout and scope of that battle. I'll get into that in a little bit. There are 3 tiers of attack cards: infantry, archers, and siege, and you can lay them out, all your infantry here, all your archers here, all your siege here, and they could all have different effects, but that doesn't really matter because that all that stuff was in the original Gwent game in The Witcher 3. The new thing that they've scooped now into cards is, and I can't tell if it's just a rarity thing or if it's just a quality sort of thing. Right now it seems to denote some sort of rarity, but they have 3 new qualities for cards called bronze, silver, and gold. So like Geralt is a card that you get right away. It's in all of your starter packs. He is denoted as a gold card, and I think that has something to do with rarity. And what these cards essentially do is they have a little bit more attack power, they have certain abilities associated with them, but the gold cards have a little extra thing. Like, let's say you have a gold card like Geralt, and your opponent casts a Scorch card. Normally the Scorch card would take the strongest card off the board. That's what the Scorch card does. Because Geralt is normally one of the strongest cards out there on the board, if you cast the Scorch card, Geralt will be now immune to that Scorch card because he is gold. So that's a new mechanic that I actually really, really like, because in the original Witcher game, if you had a super strong card out there and somebody threw out, one of those, really death-dealing cards, you would lose your strongest card, and that's a way to get around it. I'm finding out that you typically want to have a lot of cards right now in your deck. You can have right now up to 40 bronze cards, up to 10 silver cards, and up to 4 gold cards, and then it's something like 10 event or special cards like Scorch or Clear Weather, or any of the other weather effects. I'm finding that you want a lot of cards in your deck, but right now, just based off 24 matches, you want to be pretty stingy in the way that you set up your card decks, because right now the starting card decks are pretty versatile. They have, they dispense evenly across bronze, silver, and gold, and across infantry, archer, and siege equipment, typically you're going to want to cater your custom decks to either infantry or archer or siege equipment and kind of build your events around that. So let's say you have a Northern Realms deck. The siege equipment for the Northern Realms deck, a lot of them have immediate effects. So like let's say you drop a Ballistae. The ability on that Ballistae takes 5 strength off of any of your opponent's cards. Well, besides the gold. So what you want to do is, so I'm going to build around that siege equipment, take 5 damage off of whatever siege or archers they have, and then I'm going to throw in a lot of Biting Frost cards. And what the Biting Frost cards do is it removes all the strength from any infantry on the board, including your infantry. So you want to heavy load on archer and siege equipment, then and not have maybe as many infantry on there just to offset the balance from the Biting Frost. Those are just some early strats that I'm noticing. It doesn't really matter all that much in the long run. I'm sure those strats will change. This is just the beta, so things will be changing as we go through. I like some of the faction faceless that they had, because when you had a faction in the Witcher 3 version of Gwent, you typically got all the leader cards right away. Like, if you wanted a specific version of Emir, you had all, 3 or 4 of them right away. This one, you just get one right away, and I think you can earn more or craft more later. And they do different things now this time. Like the Eridan card from the monster deck, it spawns Eridan into the battlefield. In the Scoia'tael deck, you get to do the random choosing once again from the beginning of the round, which is really, really nice. If you're in a pinch and you got 3 event cards but no more attack cards, and you go, ooh, you could just pop that one in, and there you go. As of this writing, I've really only experimented with the Monster and Northern Realms decks in terms of customization. I've played with the starter Skellige deck, and I've played with the starter Scoia'tael deck. Actually, you'll see in this video, I've included almost that entire round. The Scoia'tael deck, that was the first round that I actually won, which was a lot of fun, because I was playing against another Scoia'tael deck, and it was fisticuffs. It was a rough game. Right now, I'm starting to see some of the strats that you can use. Like Skellige, for instance, has a lot of cards that come back way, way stronger once they've been cast to the discard pile, so after a round. So what you want to do is you kind of want to get a lot of those cards out there into the first round, even if you lose it. Because then in the second round, if you have a bunch of medics or a bunch of revive cards, if you bring them back from the graveyard, they will be back now stronger and way, way more capable. Some of the Berserker ones, some of the on-crate warrior ones, they come back and they're like almost double the strength. So even if you lose that first round, that second round you can come back and you can absolutely trounce them. The monster deck, as I was talking with Juggernaut the last night, it's super OP right now, because basically, and this is true in the Witcher 3 version of Gwent as well, the more cards you have, the more likely you are to win, because, if you have a deck of 60 cards, you're only going to be using about 12 of them at a time, unless you have a lot of cards that dip back into your deck. You get the initial set, you're allowed to redraw a couple of them, and then in between rounds you draw 2, and then the next round you draw 1. So you don't use a lot of your deck, but the monster deck, what it does, there's a lot of them that say, hey, pull this clone from your deck, or this one just creates a clone. It's not even from your deck, it just creates a clone automatically. If you drop even just one of them on there, you suddenly have double the amount of cards on the playing field, or they have an event card called Breedable, or it's some sort of hive thing where certain monster cards are denoted as breedable. You drop this card, and every monster that is denoted as breedable will suddenly now have a clone of itself on there. So you can see now some of the strats coming into here. Those are just the 2 I've noticed. I've talked a little bit about the Northern Realms strat with the siege equipment. There's a lot to unpack, and I've only really just started digging into this, so I'll continue to talk about this and make videos and kind of formulate my ideas about strats as we go through. I have a couple of small complaints, because really I'm having a blast with it. I'm having a lot of fun. I really like the way some of the gold cards have animations tied to them, and right now my only gold card is Geralt, unfortunately. But he has a really slick animation whenever you highlight over his card, where it's Geralt just swinging his sword, taking down a bunch of drowners. It's a small touch like that they really didn't need to put in, but makes those gold cards feel a little bit more alive and a little bit more precious when they have animations tied to them. I really, really like that. I really like the interface, because I like to play with a controller. That's just my background, even on PC. Like, unless I'm doing a first-person shooter or something very specific like an RTS, I typically like to use a controller. Even in a card game setting, it's just, I'm more comfortable with it. And the fact that this game has controller support from the get-go, and it's really easy to use. I actually move a lot faster with the controller input than keyboard and mouse, to be perfectly honest. That's all there, and it works perfectly if you're hoping to use that on the PC version. One complaint, and this is super minor, and I know it's kind of nitpicky. The design philosophy behind Gwent has always really matched the aesthetic of the Witcher series, specifically Witcher 3, which was remarkably more dirty and muddy than like The Witcher 1 and The Witcher 2, which, just because they're older games, they looked a little bit more polished and cleaned up and had a little bit of a mirror sheen to them. This game is way too clean. Way too clean. The first thing when I popped it open was, oh my god, this looks like Hearthstone, and that's not what I'm doing this for. And the game plays very, very differently from Hearthstone, but it looks a lot like Hearthstone in just the way the cards shine and gleam and just appear. It looks a lot like Hearthstone. And I know that's something that, like, they really can't fix, but even just throwing a filter on the whole thing with some mud and maybe some blood and like a dagger in the corner of like the game board, that would make me feel more at home. Because when I picture playing Gwent, I picture going to a random inn in Velen or some dirty bar like the Golden Sturgeon in Novigrad and just playing a couple rounds of Gwent at a splintered table, not like this pristine, golden, shining board. You know, if you know what I'm saying. Like, take a look at this troll here. This troll, he gives you your card kegs, which are just, you know, those are your card packs. You click on the keg, he bursts it open, and then you're able to unveil your cards that way. He doesn't really fit in with the rest of the Witcher universe, and they've already rendered this troll before. This is the troll from Witcher 2, the one that was under the bridge. You know, he's got like a Borderlands-style cell shading to it. It feels really out of place with the whole thing. It's a small letdown, but like, I would much rather be playing in Velen than Azeroth. Like, and I know that's a nitpick thing, but you know, whatever. My opinion. I'll still be playing Gwent through the closed beta. I'll actually be streaming a lot of it, and if you want to catch me streaming it, I typically stream Friday afternoons from about 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to about 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. Any of those videos, in case you just don't want to go to Twitch, I will be exporting to YouTube, so, you know, my subscribers and followers, you guys can check me out on either or. I plan on really diving into this game. I really, really like it, and I want to keep going. Right now, the pricing model for Gwent is free to play, so when it is getting a full release, you will be able to dive straight in. The card kegs seem a little expensive right now for not a lot of cards. You get, what, 6 cards, I think, out of a pack, and they're like $2.99 a pack, something like that. So hopefully they'll switch up some of that stuff. I know in the beta they're still trying to figure out all the stuff on their end, and CD Projekt has always been really transparent about every move they make. So I expect we'll see more information as we go forward, but I know I'm going to be playing this for the foreseeable future. Thank you guys. I will see you all in the next video.